Hello and welcome everyone, I'm Red from Flicks Unscripted, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by the wonderful Matt Ryan, star of Constantine, Legends of Tomorrow, Assassin's Creed, Torchwood, Criminal Minds, and much more. How are you doing today?
I'm good, mate, thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming here, and we're here in Matt's old college.
Yeah.
Must be like a trip down memory lane for you.
Yeah, I haven't been here for a while. This whole building wasn't here when I was here, but it's always nice to come back, and it's a pleasure to do this with you, man.
Thank you. So let's go way back to sort of the beginning, those roots of your career. So growing up in Swansea, what inspired you to pursue a career in the arts? Is that something that was encouraged, or were you sort of persuaded to go down a more traditional path? Like, was there peer pressure?
Yeah, a bit. I come from a family of artists, essentially. On my mother's side, my grandmother was a dance teacher.
Okay.
She actually left Swansea when she was 13 years old on the back of a milk float, hitchhiked her way to London. And she became like a burlesque dancer. She used to lay on beds of nails and breathe fire. She ended up coming back to Swansea years later and marrying my grandfather. And then, so she had a dance school, and my mother actually was trained by her. And so then my mother had a dance school. And then on my father's side, my grandfather was a drummer.
Okay.
And my dad was a postman who then became a record producer.
Wow.
But all being said, that being in the context of a small town where I would say they were called like 9-to-5 artists.
Yeah.
They were very... there weren't many people who were doing the things that they were doing to make a living at that time.
Yeah.
But so I was brought up around all that and always wanted to be in the arts. When I was younger, I used to dance with my mum and loved it. Well, it used to be that my dad was a postman, so on a Saturday, he would be working in the post office, and then me and my brother had to go to dancing with my mum, and we'd hang out in these old church halls where she used to teach, in the playrooms and stuff. And there was one day I was walking around making up tap dancing, and my mum said, "Right, front of the class." And so I ended up dancing and loved it.
Yeah.
But then when I went to, and then I ended up doing Les Miserables, the West End show, playing the character of Gavroche when I was 10 years old.
Wow.
So I loved it all. And then it came to the point where I went to secondary school, which was Penarill Comprehensive School, which is not far from here.
Yeah.
And that was when it became very difficult in terms of peer pressure, you know.
Right.
Growing up in a small town where it wasn't cool to want to be an actor or to dance, you know, or to sing or to do any of those things. So everyone kind of, you had a lot of peer pressure not to do that.
Yeah.
And in a way, I kind of rebelled against it. I kind of gave in to the peer pressure. A lot of my friends that I was in primary school, they were like the boys when we went to comprehensive school. And in the end, I kind of given into it and not doing anything for the 5 years I was in college or something. And in a way, now I feel that that's good.
Yeah.
Because I did stuff when I was young, if I had carried on doing that all the way through school, and then where I went after, which we'll talk about a little bit, then my journey would have been very different.
Yeah.
But my parents were really savvy. They ended up just letting me be a kid. You know, there were no mobile phones. We were running around on the village green, riding motorbikes, you know, jumping on the wild horses and falling off. And so I was allowed to be a kid, you know. And then eventually I came back to it. And I feel that was integral to who I am today. I was allowed to have that time. I wanted to perform, you know, for the school plays. I was always offered the lead role, and I always told them, no, I don't want to do it, even though I did. But in hindsight, I think that that's a good thing, and it's kind of part of my psychological makeup now of me having a childhood and not, from Les Mis kind of being a child actor all the way through.
Yeah.
So anyway, I ended up going to school, or not going to school much, less more than more. But it didn't kind of hinder me in a way, because my dad at the time was into music, and I loved music, and he had kind of said to me, look, if you get a job as a sound engineer, I might be able to get you a job in a studio.
Okay.
Now, in order to do that, I would have to, because I didn't get any qualifications in school, I would have to come to Gorseinon College to do a BTEC in Performing Arts, the first diploma, because I didn't have any qualifications, and then that could lead to being a sound engineer.
Yeah.
But they tricked me slightly because they kind of knew that I loved performing, and then when I got onto that course, there were two boys especially that I met. One called Leon Davies and another Joseph Morgan, who you might know from the TV shows The Originals and Vampire Diaries and Halo and many others. And we all came here, and that's what, for the first time in my life, when acting was cool in terms of my peers.
Yeah.
And we three are still best friends to this day. And that's when I kind of really went, I want to be an actor.
Right, yeah.
And clicked into it. I had to do the foundation course, the first diploma, and then I went on to the national diploma, which was 3 years. And then ended up auditioning for drama school and got into the Bristol Vic Theatre School and then went there for training, you know. So it's funny in a way because coming from a place like we do, or where this college is in Gorseinon, at the time there wasn't much encouragement.
Yeah.
There was from teachers, but the kind of demographic in which you're growing up with, it wasn't a cool thing to do.
Peers,
Nobody do it. It's like, look, go be an electrician, go be a plumber, you know, go be a bricklayer. That was what you do, you know. I was like the anomaly.
Yeah.
But I stuck to my guns, and in the end it turned out all right, I think, so
there
far.
You are. Yeah, it's really interesting how you were really like into it, then that sort of went. Do you think that sort of made that passion like even more so, like coming back to it the second time around?
Yeah, I think as well, like, you know, sometimes the things that hurt you can feed you, you know, depending on how you use it. And I feel like there was a little bit of the name calling and the peer pressure that you got when I actually turned around to do it, come here and then go to Bristol Vic Theatre School. There was a little bit of me that wanted to prove myself to those people. Prove myself mostly to myself, but to those people as well. So there was a real drive and a real passion, you know. And I remember there was one time when I came back from Bristol Vic Theatre School and I went to a pub in Gorseinon, and Joseph Morgan had just got the movie Master and Commander, and he got pulled out of drama school to do it, and I was flying over to see him, and one of the boys turned around and started mocking him and saying, oh, who does he think he is, Joe Crow, because he was working with Russell Crowe. And I remember looking at him and just saying, like, watch. But no, so I let it feed me rather than put me down, 100%. You know. And I think that's with anything in life. It's how you receive it that can lead to what the outcome of it is. Yeah. And in the end, it became a kind of positive drive. Yeah, totally, like worth it then. How did your stage name come about? Is there a story behind that? There is, yeah. So I don't know if you know this, but there's a Welsh actor named Matthew Reeves. Yeah. He's a wonderful actor. He's done many shows that I could name. I think he just played Ironside in the remake of that. He was a lot older than me, and I knew when I was here, for some reason, that his real name was Matthew Evans. Okay. Same as mine. Yeah. And I knew that he had to change his name, because in the union in the UK and in America as well, you can't have someone who's the same name. Because what happens is you know, you have residuals. You're not allowed to have the same name. So I knew I had to change my name. Yeah. So the whole time I was here and in drama school, I was constantly thinking about what's my name going to be? What's my name going to be? And my mother's maiden name is Dubensky. I was going to be Matt Dubensky for a while, but it didn't feel right. And then one day, Ryan came up and it felt right. It's Celtic. It's not exclusively Welsh, but it's still Celtic, more Irish than Welsh, and it just clicked. And the funny thing about that as well was, I spent 12 years building my career in this country as Matt Ryan, and then when I went to America, the union in America, SAG, already had a Matt Ryan. So they said, well, why don't you go back to Matthew Evans? It's like, I've just spent 10 years building my... And it felt wrong. Yeah. It felt like the people who knew me and Matthew Evans was like my personal group, you know, like, and my personal friends and stuff. And Matt Ryan, I felt like... It felt like me, you know. So in the end, I ended up, putting an initial in... with the union, so Matt D. Ryan. Okay. And then I'm billed as Matt Ryan. And luckily for me, the Matt Ryan in America hasn't
taken off.
Hasn't done as much as I have. So then I'm more recognised for that in the business. But there can be problems because the unions are the ones that kind of look after the residuals and collecting like any monies and stuff. So there was this one time with the British Union where I had an email and I got paid like 0.1 pence for being in Vikings, and I was never in Vikings.
Yeah.
And I called them. I was like, "You got the wrong Matt Ryan." And I was like, "Has this guy been getting some of my residuals?"
Yeah.
So that's the reason why they don't have the same name, essentially. Yeah.
Did you keep the 0.01 pence?
No. I tried to. I'm honest, right? It's that guy. Probably needs the money, like I do, but. So I tried to work it out to get it back to him. I think we're still trying to work that out now.
There you are.
Yeah.
So you made that journey from Swansea to Bristol, then London, then US. So what kept you motivated through all that? And did you face any prejudice due to being Welsh?
So it's an interesting thing, right? It's like, all the peer pressure I spent, fighting when I was in Wales. And then when I went to an English drama school, I was cast as Barone in Love's Labour's Lost, a Shakespeare play.
Okay.
And I had to do RP, which is received pronunciations, like a standard English accent. And I wasn't very good at it. Much better now, I think. But and so I spoke to the dialect coach. Excuse me. I spoke to the dialect coach and I said, "Do you think it's a good idea that I should practice speaking in this accent, all the time?"
Yeah.
And she said to me, "Well, darling, why else did you come to an English drama school but to lose your Welsh accent?" And I just got my back up.
Yeah.
Because for me, acting is about being an actor, who I am as a person. An actor's skill set should be able to play different accents, to embody different people, and it's
keep it separate to yourself.
Yeah, so there was a little bit at first, but the Welsh wasn't really that popular then. And then I think it's when Notting Hill came out, and somebody came up to me and said, "Oh, you should keep your Welsh accent." And by then I was already like, "Oh, I'm keeping it," and it moves around now, my accent, because I travel so much and lived all over the place. But so there was a tiny. And I wouldn't say it was prejudice because they were awesome, and Bristol Vic was one of the best experiences in my life. Yeah. But I think it was just a sign of the times. The funny thing was, in Bristol Vic there was only 15 people in the year. And that's a great thing because you have a lot more concentrated attention on you by the tutors. Yeah. But at the same time, I was the only Welsh person, there was one Irish person, and there was a guy from Birmingham, and then a lot of the other people were from very well-to-do backgrounds.
Right.
So it was a little bit like... I wasn't very well educated, didn't go to school that much, wasn't well read. So when we were doing a Shakespeare play, I'm cast as the lead role, and we're sitting around a table talking, and I'm writing down the words that people are using to describe the word we're talking about. Right. And back in those days, you didn't have the internet, so I used to go home, get the dictionary, get the thesaurus, and study like mad, to try and kind of train myself. Yeah. To understand what these people, what everyone was talking about, and to be clear, like I hated Shakespeare, because it was always when I was younger, I hated it because it was always so beyond me, and I always seen it as this kind of like snobby kind of these snobby plays that people did. But then once I started to learn, understand it and learn it, I fell in love with it, and ironically, on the first day of drama school, we all sat in a semicircle, and they go around and they ask you what would be your first ideal job. Okay. And lots of people were like, the Royal Shakespeare Company, the National Theatre. I was like, gritty domestic drama, like where I'm from, like the salt of the earth kind of stuff. And the irony, in a way, is my first job out of drama school was, my first theatre job out of drama school was the lead role of the Royal Shakespeare Company. But by that time, I'd gotten into it and educated myself on it, and learned to fall in love with it, and I love Shakespeare to this day.
Yeah. And one of your biggest roles is Constantine, and many people refer to your portrayal of Constantine as one of the best superhero castings of all time. Can you tell me a bit about how you landed the role, how you prepared? surely that comes with a lot of pressure, being, the leading character as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I played a lot of lead roles in plays.
Yeah.
And actually, I was, at the time, when Constantine came around, I was playing Llewellyn, who's the Welsh captain, to Jude Law's Henry V. Cool. And I had long hair and a big beard.
Yeah.
And the meeting came through. I did the meeting. They sent the tape off to America. They really liked me, but the producers really liked me, but the studio and the network couldn't see through the long hair and the beard. Okay. So they asked me to redo they first asked me if I could cut my hair and shave my beard, and I was doing a play, so I couldn't. They asked me to do the tape again. So what they did is they gave me notes on what I did, and I adjusted. I ended up doing 13 tapes and sending them over, and the casting director was great. At one point, they wanted to fly me over to meet them, but what we were doing the play, we were doing Henry V, and one of the cast members' wife had got really sick, and so I couldn't fly over because he was understudying a role. So normally, there might have been the opportunity to say, like, okay, you can go because there's understudies, people take different roles. Yep. But, that was already all those roles had been taken by the understudy. So, yeah. And also, it's not that I didn't care about it that much, but, when somebody's sick, you're like, hey, listen, I'm not going to ask you to do something so I can fly over. I was like, I'll do a tape. If they like me, they like me. If not, they don't. So I ended up, I had a month left of the play to do, and I believe that they saw 400 people. And by the end of it, luckily enough for me, they still hadn't cast it. So they said, we wanted you to come over. So the day the play finished, we had the after party. I woke up in the morning, jumped on a plane to Los Angeles, cut my hair off, shaved my beard, and then went and tested. You do like screen tests and stuff, and then got the role. Yeah. In terms of preparing for it, I'd worked with a good friend of mine named Ben Reed. He actually has his own comic book company called Ben Reed's Books. Okay. And he's a book publisher, and he was producing a movie that we had put together, and he was a huge Constantine fan. And when we were working on this movie, I was sleeping in his bedroom, which had all of his books and comic books. And he had told me a bit about Constantine, how he loved him and all that sort of stuff. And so I got a little bit of information from him. And then when I got the audition, I just kind of delved into it as much as I could. And when I got the role, they the producers give me a bunch of stuff to read, and then I just threw myself into the comics as much as possible. Yeah. And I feel like with pressure, at the time, I kind of knew of Constantine, but it wasn't like Batman in my head. No. If it's Batman, it's slightly different. But I think with anything as an actor, you do what's on the page, and you try to be true to that and bring a bit of yourself to it, and I just concentrated on the work. Yeah. Like if I thought about being the lead role and being Constantine and what that means to other people, you probably fold. So you focus on the work, and the work is what gets you through. Yeah. I don't think I realized kind of how beloved and how big it was until I went to Comic-Con San Diego, and I was on all the buses, and there was big cardboard cutouts of me and people dressed as Constantine. I was like, okay, all right, yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, but for me, I always had a comic in my back pocket. Yeah. So if ever I was stuck with a character, or especially physically as well, you look at the panels in a comic, and there's always a physicality to them, especially with John, and so I would always just take from that, so I just kept myself kind of focused on him and the work, and tried not to get distracted. I mean, I couldn't get distracted because there wasn't enough time. You shoot so fast and so long hours that I didn't have a chance to kind of really let myself be aware of the enormity of it,
Yeah, and I mean, you must have done a good job because the character's beloved, and you've reprised the role several times, over the past decade, whether that's on Constantine, Legends of Tomorrow, or in voice acting work. So, given the chance to reprise the role again, is that something you'd be interested in, or are you kind of like done with the character now after that whole decade?
No, I think with John Constantine, after we did the first series, Constantine, and we got cancelled after 13 episodes, I was really disappointed because there was so much wonderful material in the comic books to explore, so many different parts of the character to kind of bring to life. so many stories to tell the audience. And I felt that there was unfinished business, and it was great then that I was asked back in through Arrow and then the animated stuff, Legends of Tomorrow, and all of that. And what I felt in a way was, at first I was a bit skeptical about going on to Legends of Tomorrow because it was a completely different style of show.
Yeah.
And I was always trying to be as true to the DNA of the character in the comic books, the Hellblazer comic books, and the graphic novels. And I just felt like, I don't think that, one, I feel like he's a character that deserves his own show, and as much the storyline spent on him as much as possible. And also, I don't know if the style of that TV show fits him. Yeah. But the way then I came around to it was when they sent me the script to the episode that they wanted to do, it was actually very much in Constantine's wheelhouse. I think it was season 3, episode 10 of Legends of Tomorrow. And I was like, oh, they're really like, it feels like they would look after this character. Yeah. And one thing I said to them was like, I don't think he's just another person who would be on the Wave Rider in the background where we're going today. If he's there, he's always got his own thing going on. Something always goes wrong with him. So there was these things that we talked about, have to serve the character well each season, give him, a good storyline. And I think that they did that really, really well. Yeah. They really tried. And the way that I kind of looked at it in my head was, in the DC universe, Constantine pops up in lots of different comics. Yeah. Right? And for me, it was like, okay, the DNA of this character for me is in the Hellblazer comics, the show Constantine, but we were trying to, be as true to the comics as possible, albeit on network television. And then he's just popping up in Legends. Yeah. So as long as I keep the DNA in that character and we serve him well enough, then I think that it will work. And I think it ended up it did work, you know. Apart from one thing that I was pissed off about, man, was like, and it's no disrespect to anyone, like with those things you work so fast and so hard, but the color of the hair changed through all the time, and they were on my show. They worked so hard to get it to look natural, like just a touch of the eyebrow, a little bit of the beard when I had one, and the hair, to make it look like he's a natural blonde. Yeah. And I did one episode at one point, I can't remember what show it was on, and I was speaking to the hair and makeup person, and they just bleached it, and I went, look, it just doesn't look natural. But they went, but he bleaches his hair, and I went, because like I love this character, like he means so much to me, and I know how much he means to the fans. And for you not to know that Constantine is blonde, and to you think that he bleaches his hair, and you not to know that, like, I'm screwed here, So you notice through the 3 seasons that we play Constantine in Legends that the hair shifts a bit, and that's one bit that it was hard to fight, and that's not down to anybody in particular's fault. It's just the nature of that beast, and kind of and sometimes when you're on an ensemble show, the attention that can be paid on an individual character.
Definitely. I know a lot of people did quite like the blonde hair though.
The only thing I didn't like, man, is having my hair dyed, having my roots done every 2 weeks,
Every 2 weeks?
Or every couple of weeks, it'd be like, roots done. I'm like, But I tell you a good thing about playing John Constantine on a show like Legends of Tomorrow was, it's a time travel show, right? So they go somewhere every week, every episode, and so then all of the actors have to dress up to that time period. John Constantine never did.
Right.
So I had the same costume the whole time. Yeah. So, and when you were shooting 14-hour days, the actors would have to go off to costume fittings, and it takes time out of your day. And for me, it'd just be like, John, where's the trench coat, And if and the one thing my argument to was for John not changing is, if he wants to look like them, he'll just do a glamour spell, which means you can change your appearance. Yeah. So John, and John also doesn't give a shit, No. He's just one of those people he's nonchalant. I even got it down to where I had the sound microphone wired into my tie. So I didn't even have to go to the sound desk for me to be wired. I put my tie on in my dressing room, walk up, they'd hand me the mic pack, I plug it in, I walk straight on the set. And I find it was kind of like very John Constantine.
Gets you in the zone. Yeah. So would you reprise the role?
I mean, like, look, the thing is with these characters, Batman, look at Theatre Hamlet, how many people played Hamlet, or he's such a wonderful character, he's beloved by so many people, and you know, the Keanu Reeves version, which I loved. I watched it before I did the show. I feel like it's a different interpretation to what we were trying to do, you know. And I like the movie for what it is. And Keanu Reeves is awesome. I'm a huge fan. And I feel like they served the character as well as they could on Legends of Tomorrow. But I always felt that, you know, we wanted to do something kind of even more truer to the comic books. Yeah. If you look at TV today with shows like The Boys and the streaming services where you can be much more, you know, gory or risque, you know, John Constantine, he smokes, you know, you want to see him smoking, having sex, like swearing, you know, like, and those comics, the earlier comics, some of them are really dark and twisted, and I'd like to have really gotten into like that side of John. It's difficult on network television, and I think that we did have a good go at it, and then on Legends it wasn't the style to go that far, you know, and so, you know, I always in the back of my mind was like, I'd love to do like almost like a HBO or an Amazon or a streaming service kind of version where you could really kind of go to town on what I love about these comic books, and I think what the fans love too. But to answer your question, yeah, you know what, I would. I don't feel like I felt when my show was cancelled that there's unfinished business. No. But I do feel like there's so many great stories to tell, and that I still feel that there's many levels to that character that I could bring that I didn't bring in those various kind of mediums and styles of television show. So I would, you know, if I was offered the chance to reprise him, you know, I would love to, albeit in what context, you know.
Who wouldn't love?
Yeah, exactly. I think he's the coolest character in the whole DC canon, you know. Blue collar, working class mage, you know, and so yes, the short answer is yes, I would. But at every part of my journey with John Constantine, I've always thought it was done. Yeah. So when my TV show was cancelled, I was disappointed. I was like, okay, move on. Yeah. Then they pulled me back in for Arrow. I was like, okay, it's done. Yeah. Then they asked me to do an animated movie. I was like, okay. Then I thought it was done. Then they asked me to do... it's like that great line in The Godfather 3 when Al Pacino's character, Michael Corleone, says, like, as soon as I think I'm out, they pull me back in. And I kind of felt like that because after one season of my show, I ended up playing the character for 10 years. Yeah. 10 years. The last thing I did was just released, which was the animated trilogy of Crisis on Infinite Earths, and that was the last thing I did. And so it ended up being 2 years, 10 years. So, you know, one thing I've learned from that is never say never, but I also feel like that I don't have a sense of ownership over the character. No. You know, James Gunn, who I think is a wonderful director, and I'd love to work with him on whatever project, especially John Constantine, but, you know, whatever he decides, like, I trust his judgment, and I would be kind of supportive of that and a fan of whatever he did, and be interested to see, you know, what they did with it and become a fan of that, and feel then lucky that I have been part of one of the actors that have bring this character to life and tell stories, and hopefully, you know, bring the people who love him as much joy or torture, whatever you want to call it, with John as possible. You know? Yeah,
absolutely. You said about like different actors playing him. Did you take any inspiration from Keanu Reeves' perspective?
No, well, I had watched the movie years before. It was 2005 the movie was released, and I think we shot Constantine beginning of 2013 or 2014? 2014, one of those. And as soon as I got the meeting and I got the job, I really liked that version, but I thought, you know what, the premit here is to be as true to the comics as possible. And David S. Goyer and Daniel Cerrone, the producers, they gave me, you know, the comics and said, look, this is where you want to put yourself. So I just kind of looked at that and tried to be as true as possible to 100%. That.
And after Constantine on Legends of Tomorrow, you played a part in creating the Welsh character, Gwyn Davies.
Yeah.
What was your role like creating him, and what did that character mean to you?
It's a funny one, man, because, you know, the rights to Constantine had been taken, I think, by J.J. Abrams at the time, and they were going to reboot the Constantine show. So we weren't allowed to use the character, and I just thought, okay, well, that's great. You know, again, it's time to move on. As an actor, you can't hold on to these things, you know. So I was like, okay, it's time to go and leave the show. And then they just said, well, do you want to stay and we can make a character? And I was like, only on Legends of Tomorrow could you do that. Yeah. And it's a funny thing, because I was trepidatious about it at the start, because I knew that the fans were kind of, they'd liked what I did as John. I didn't want to mess with them, and I didn't see a way really of doing something, creating the character as cool as John Constantine. So in a way, it kind of went the other direction. I said, John is the guy who sits like this and smokes cigarettes, he's nonchalant, doesn't give a shit. What about we just physically completely change it into an introverted character? And Dr. Gwyn kind of came about like the showrunner and the writers kind of chucked a few ideas out there, and I went away, and they kind of left me to it by myself, and I left them to it. And then when I flew into Vancouver, they're like, right, we're gonna this. The idea of him being like the master of time travel was there, the inventor of time travel, and some various things. But then I didn't quite know what he was going to be, I just kind of, he just kind of happened. I grew my hair long, grew a beard, and I knew that I wanted him the character had to serve the show. 100%. Because John was someone in the show who's almost on the peripheral in a way. He's someone who's always got his own thing going on. He's not a team player. He doesn't give a shit about what time period you're in or all of that. We wanted someone, for the audience's sake, who is interested, who's on the front foot, who's looking in and saying, wow, time travel worked. I did it, Wow, we're going to hear someone who's active, much more than John, who is in that scenario was not. So there was these various different kind of broad strokes that I kind of played with, and then he just happened. I can't really say how. He's kind of an organic thing, and I fell in love with him. Absolutely fell in love with him. That the idea of him having PTSD from World War One, and how that affected him, and his drive and his ambition to make a time machine was born from love. Of these very human kind of qualities that we instilled, and he kind of happened. And the hardest thing about it, in a way, was knowing that I was going to be changing character in front of the audience, but also knowing changing character in front of the crew and the other actors. Yeah. So in the last season, when I played Gwyn, I didn't come in until episode 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. And there was a reason for that. It's because we wanted to give the audience a break from Constantine. Constantine was dead, or he'd gone off into the shadows, and we wanted to make it a surprise. And also, I wanted it physically to be unrecognizable, in a way, so people go like, "Is that the guy who played John?" Yeah. It was. But the funny thing is, when I first walked on set, all the cast and the legends have been working with each other for 5 episodes, and I walk on, they're like, "Man, what happened?" And I walk on as Dr. Gwyn, and I had to kind of stay in the character a little bit. I had to force them to readjust themselves, because they're a little bit like, "Oh, what are you doing? Where's John?" And I remember the cameraman saying to me once, he was like, "So no more John?" Because they liked me playing John. Yeah. And, I was like, no. And that's a difficult thing, because you can feel like, oh, they might not like this guy. And you just say, be bold and brave, and you have to push it, push that character and believe in your choices. And that takes courage. And eventually it turned out really, really well. And I remember a couple of the first scenes filming, and Nick Zano just going like, "Bro, this is weird, man. Like, where's John?" But it was really fun for me as well to kind of, you're messing with them in a way, because you're forcing a completely different character on them, and it was really fun to play, and I ended up falling in love with the character, and unfortunately the show got cancelled after that season, and I just signed on for another 2 seasons. So I would have been interested to see where Gwyn would have gone, and I have my ideas about that, but
and him being Welsh as
well. I think that, I think there was an idea for the character that I was going to play to be an Australia surfer dude at one point. Really? Yeah. So we went all around the thing. I was like, shall I go away, like, hit the gym, jack up, and come back as, like, But it didn't feel right. I wanted something, and even a surfer guy is kind of more confident in his body. Yeah. I wanted something, and him being Welsh as well, I felt like the kind of the neuroticism that he had, and the trauma that he had suffered. I don't know. I didn't plan for him to be Welsh. It just kind of happened. I just kind of found him in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So nowadays you travel doing a lot of Comic-Cons, right? Where you meet different fans. How does it feel to sort of receive that love for your work, especially, as we sit here in your old college in Gorseinon? How's that feel?
It feels really nice, actually. I think that one of the things, you do an iconic role like John Constantine, then, you could fall flat on your face. And to know that, the fans, the ones I've met especially, I'm sure it's not for everybody, have been very... they've received me as the character, and that's a huge compliment, and especially the people who come up who are fans of the original Hellblazer comics, and they're avid fans. Yeah. And I'm an avid fan now. I've read all the comics. I'm a fan of that shit, and for them to say it's like you just walked off the screen, or when they say when I read, I hear your voice, that's okay. Because for me as well, it's serving the character, serving the fans through the character. That was always a pre-mit for me, Yeah. So it's lovely, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. And at those Comic-Cons, obviously you're there with different other actors too. Have you met anybody who maybe inspired you when you were younger?
Yeah, I have. It's funny because you meet people at those things and you become friends with them, and there's always people that I've worked with there as well. Yeah. But yeah, I've met, but I mean, I watch things too, and there's actors that inspired me all through my life. Like Al Pacino was such a big influence, and I was doing a play on Broadway on 54th Street in the old Studio 54, which used to be an old club back in the day. And Al Pacino was on 52nd Street, and a friend of mine used to look after him when he did talks, and I ended up going to watch his play and meeting him, and we ended up talking about Broadway, and for a moment we felt like we were peers because we were both on Broadway at the same time, having a similar experience, and that was a wonderful thing. So you meet a lot of people at those things, and I met Jeff Goldblum at one before, and I went and had a picture with him. I was like, do you mind? Yes, it's cool.
Yeah. And so finally, looking back on sort of where you've come from and how you are now, and that success you've had, what advice would you give your younger self?
I don't know. I'd say I think the one thing is in this business, or I think in anything, but especially in this business, is perseverance, and study. I think that you have so many knockbacks, and keep going. I think that if it's in your bones and you have to do it, all art is a form of expression, and if you have to express yourself, then no matter who knocks you back, then do it. Yeah. Take every opportunity you can to act. If there's an audition, do it, even if you're not going to get the job, Like Al Pacino actually said that. He said, just keep doing it all the time, keep practicing. Yeah. And I would say perseverance, stick in there, Yeah. And if you love it, then just keep going with it. I would have said that to myself. But I feel like it is something that I've done as well, because I had knockbacks as well, It wasn't just all rainbows and butterflies. This industry isn't, So I think the perseverance and trusting in a process. Like when you're doing a play, the first couple of weeks you feel like you're absolutely awful, and you trust in the process of the work. Yeah. And from what you've learned, and I do believe that things will come around.
Absolutely. Well, that's wonderful advice. So, being back in Gorseinon now, when's your next convention? Where are you going?
I'm going to Miami on Monday.
Nice.
And then I got one there next weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm taking a break for a bit.
Don't blame you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine the travelling's quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun, man. I mean, I feel really blessed. I feel lucky that I get to be able to kind of travel and meet loads of people, and just to be able to do my job. I think that that's what I feel. I feel grateful every day, and I'm full of gratitude for that. Yeah,
absolutely. How do your friends react when you come back here, after your success?
They're all cool. They don't give a shit, man.
No,
it's great. We do for a pint down the pub. It's great. Really? I love coming back, and some of my old school friends. Those very people in a way that where there was a lot of peer pressure. Like we're the best of friends now. We do little camping trips together and all that.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's great that that's come around as well. Because I think when you're in a school situation or when you're younger as well, there's always peer pressure. It doesn't mean that the people were malicious or terrible in any way. It's just like sign of the times, where you are in the world demographically, and no, we're great friends, and I love coming back here, and I love going down to my local pub and all that stuff.
There you are. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Cheers,
it's
man.
been a pleasure.
Thank you, man. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.